Perhaps the biggest storyline Marvel Comics has announced is upon us in 2025, probably the biggest thing they've done since King in Black, perhaps the biggest thing they've done since Dark Reign. And here to talk with us about One World Under Doom is Doc.
Doom is probably my favorite villain. He's right up there next to Magneto. Just an all-time amazing, world-class villain. He can be both sympathetic and utterly terrifying. He is everything that you want in a superhero comic supervillain.
One World Under Doom is an overarching status quo shift coming to Marvel, the likes with which we haven't seen since 2008's Dark Reign, spinning out of Blood Hunt, where Dr. Doom manipulated Doctor Strange into passing him the mantle of Sorcerer Supreme. One World Under Doom sees Doom accomplish his ultimate goal at last as he uses his new power to take over the entire world. It's a shocking and upending turn of events that will impact Marvel's entire line of comics and see the launch of tie-in series and one-shots collectively forming an era worthy of comic books' greatest supervillain. One World Under Doom begins with Doom declaring himself Emperor of the World and the ruler of a new united Latveria. Marvel also teased that some heroes will welcome the new Emperor with open arms, joining the legions of people clamoring for One World Under Doom. Other than some heroes siding with Doom, which I don't know that I like the heroes versus hero thing, but all that information is very, very exciting. That makes for an amazing event, potentially, that has enormous ramifications and huge moments for comic book fans.
I agree and I disagree. Doom has wanted to do this for a long time, and the general populace of the 616 Marvel Universe has not wanted to live under Doom. So the idea that world leaders and civilians and everyone else would be somehow clamoring to be under the control of somebody like Doom is stretching credulity to me. That's on top of the idea that some heroes would somehow be okay with this. It feels like this is them hand waving in a situation or a paradigm within the Marvel Universe that they have to dig their way out of, rather than actually working their way towards it. I've had some issues with the way they've handled the Doom thing and him being Sorcerer Supreme, primarily due to the fact that you can't just like hand it to somebody else and like hire them for the gig. You actually have to be the Sorcerer Supreme. They're doing some very, very illogical things to set up what might be a good story. But as a result, I feel like I'm going to be utterly underwhelmed, because if they're not even going to put in the work to build the foundation to the paradigm that they want to do with One World Under Doom, I have a lot less faith that they're going to be able to execute their way out of it. I like it in theory. I don't like the folks that are involved in it or the way that they're getting there so far.
But it is likely the biggest thing that Marvel Comics could really do to energize the fan base. Not a lot of excitement going on. People are kind of down on Amazing Spider-Man. The luster is wearing off the Ultimate Universe. No real hot titles right now. Putting Dr. Doom as the ruler of the entire world and making the Avengers have to come together and fight against that, I think is a recipe for excitement and really fun comic book storytelling.
I agree with you. It's just, I feel like they could have built the excitement. They're trying to force excitement out of this with a really, really good idea, but they could have built some great organic excitement by spending the next 6 to 12 months actually building this Doom conquering the world thing, all these countries getting in line with him, rather than just hand waving it into existence. You could have really built something amazing. Do they need the shot in the arm? 100%. I feel like this is just another Marvel quick fix. That's the only thing that leaves me with any trepidation. The actual idea here is fucking solid, and having a world where Doom is the one in control, the heroes have to somehow come together to free the world from, is a wonderful idea. I mean, it gives me shades of Age of Apocalypse. It gives me Onslaught vibes. It's just that I feel like they're skipping to the good part, taking away a lot of what could be real sustained hype in order to get some cheap pops.
And I do think they are missing the mark when it comes to talent associated. Marvel announced a new 5-issue event miniseries starring Doctor Doom by Ryan North and R.B. Silva, titled Rise of Emperor Doom. The new story will anchor Marvel's new One World Under Doom event. The events of the story will also heavily impact North's run on Fantastic Four, while also allowing Doom's reign to be felt all across the Marvel Universe. Rise of Emperor Doom will debut on February 12th, taking readers behind Victor Von Doom's mask, allowing them to bear witness to the triumphs and trials of his rule, as well as the foolish attempts to topple it. Ryan North is not a big-time comic book writer for a reason. He's not all that talented. The few issues of Fantastic Four that are actually worth reading are not serious in nature. They're very, very goofy, full of shenanigans and stuff like that. I cannot believe they would entrust potentially the biggest story at Marvel Comics of the past decade to an absolute novice, unsuccessful writer like Ryan North.
I mean, the guy is a nobody that is honestly pretty laughable in most cases. And the idea of entrusting him with the core title screams that this is going to be completely editorially mandated. Everything involved in this is going to be done by editorial. He's there to throw some dialogue balloons in. If he's involved at all in the plotting, I have exactly zero faith that this is going to be anything other than nonsensical shenanigans and jokes that should probably be counted as a war crime because they're that bad.
And I guess the problem is, R.B. Silva's a good artist, but if you don't use Ryan North, who would you use? Jed McKay just got a crack with Blood Hunt. Didn't work out very well for him. Seems like Jonathan Hickman's been spread pretty thin at Marvel Comics. Obviously he's their one A-list writer. Maybe you don't want to go to him for every single thing, but other than that, who are you going to go to? Chip Zdarsky? Not really. Phil Kennedy Johnson is one of their better writers, but he also works for DC. Maybe they don't want to give him an event. As far as Marvel talent that there is, I don't think they fucking have any anymore.
No, they don't. They have zero writing talent. I've never thought Hickman was anywhere as good as people thought he was. And he is by far their marquee creator at this point. I mean, what are they going to do? Slap Zeb Wells on it? I mean, sure, I guess he needs something to fucking do. But after the disaster that was ASM, I doubt that they'd go back to that well anytime soon for something this front and center and important for the universe. They don't have anyone. You're going to grab one of the generic Stephanies? I guess you could get somebody like Brian Edward Hill, but he did one or two okay issues of Ultimate Black Panther, but it's nothing to write home about. Ben Percy? No. I mean, shit, at this point, the best writer that they have is still outside of Hickman is maybe Gail Simone. There is 0% chance that she'd be writing something like this. I mean, unless you just want a bunch of wine aunt jokes about Dr. Doom and his castle or some shit like that. And I guess in the loosest possible way, it makes sense for Ryan North just because he's writing Fantastic Four and Dr. Doom is so closely associated with the Fantastic Four that he'd get first crack at it. They're not going to give it the slot.
Yeah, it definitely does feel like Marvel put themselves in this terrible spot where they want to do things that are big, but they literally have no one left to do it. And, now you turn into a Ryan North, whose Fantastic Four is certainly better than you and I ever imagined it could be. I know you're not reading it, but there are some readable issues here and there. But he's nowhere near ready for anything like this. That's not going to be big enough to warrant Dr. Doom and this enormous turd.
We all said that when Dan Slott got that Empire event, 5 years ago at this point?
First thing after COVID.
Exactly. So 21, so 3 years ago, 2021, something like that. We thought that at the time, and Dan Slott is an infinitely bigger name at Marvel Comics and in the eyes of readers than Ryan North. So no, their bench is utterly and completely empty. And well, they can't just have Jonathan Hickman write every event.
This does feel like a, break in case of emergency kind of story that, hey, we could always make Dr. Doom the Sorcerer Supreme and have him take over the world. Everybody would be interested in that. And now they don't really have the people to take it on. Now, we will be seeing this, obviously, outside the pages of just Fantastic Four and this Rise of Emperor Doom. We are going to be seeing it, I guess, set up in the 8 Deaths of Spider-Man. Sounds like Justina Ireland's actually going to be taking that over, but we're going to be seeing one shots and mini series and stuff like that. But that doesn't move the needle anymore either, Doc, because everyone knows that none of this stuff matters to the big scope of things.
Because it's not set up to have any long-term ramification. When you had eras where there were massive world-changing events, you were building the tension and building the threat over a long period of time. They're doing a 6-issue mini that's going to coincide with the actual event. They're putting in basically the setup during the event. That just tells me that you don't have any faith in it and that you're just trying to spam out another event. None of it can matter because you already have 14 ideas also in the pipeline that you're going to spam out next. So even if this turns out to be good and something that people hang on to, there's no way to know that until the event is essentially over.
Unfortunately, there will be a little bit of collateral damage. I'm a big fan of Strange Academy. It was done by Scotty Young and Humberto Ramos. They have started to get some other writers on there. And now we're going to get a follow-up to that called Doom Academy, a 5-issue limited series written by author Mackenzie Cadenhead and drawn by Pascal Frey that sees Doctor Strange's school for young sorcerers transformed in accordance with Doom's rules. The students of Strange Academy were instrumental in Doom's bold reach for power and blood hunt. And now that he has the entire world under his mighty thumb, his influence on these breakout young Marvel heroes truly begins. I don't know who Mackenzie Cadenhead is. They said that he did like Marvel Mutts, which I'm assuming is an Infinity comic book that nobody read. Pascal Frey is a perfectly fine artist. He's not Humberto Ramos. You know, this feels sad to me because I was always hoping for more Strange Academy with Scotty Young and Humberto Ramos, but maybe Scotty Young is too expensive or is too busy to go back to that for something as insignificant as Doom Academy.
I think they realize that that the event itself is a good idea. They just have absolutely no idea how to make it work. So they're just grabbing anything that is even slightly, I guess you could say, magic related, other than what they did with Blood Hunt, trying to piggyback the two. And that's where this feels like it's coming from. Mackenzie Cadenhead.
Who the fuck is that? Never heard of him.
Yeah, exactly. That's a fake name. 90% of comic readers that have probably never read anything by Ryan North basically respond with, who the fuck is that? 99% of people reading the ancillary book that I guess is the companion book that ties in by somebody named Michaela Cadenhead will absolutely go, who the fuck is that? That's the Marvel comics we have today. A who's who of who cares.
And that's unfortunate because Doctor Doom taking over the world should be one of the biggest things they've done really in the past decade, if not a little bit longer. We shall see what happens. I do hold out hope for this. I do think they found the wrong writer, but I don't even know who the right writer would be that they would actually trust with something like that. I do want to say thank you very much to Doc for joining us today. Talking about this, we did have a little bit of a wardrobe change. Very interesting. Never done that on the channel. If you would like the entire conversation, which went about 23, 25 minutes, something like that, in our entire review of Iron Man #1, there is a link in the video description to the Patreon, Doc Unfiltered, where you get everything unedited and unfiltered, pure, unadulterated Doc, just like you like.
And if you can guess what the cause of the wardrobe change is, you will win the first ever Thinking Critical No prize.